Welcome back to Sunrise Daily. It's 7 minutes past 8 and Bola Bakare joins us this morning and we're having a good laugh before we came about to set. Thank you for coming on this morning.
I'm glad to be here.
Well, we're focusing on our education system now. I mean, everyone should be concerned. How do we get it right? Because if we do, we ultimately will see the benefits, even right out there on the streets. But you've studied, I mean, you've seen what's going on. You hear the complaints, people talk about the standards. And so you can imagine if generations before us say, look, it was better than what we're having now. The one ahead of us say, look, it's better than what we have now. And even if we say it's better than what we had in our time, look, where's all this headed?
Oh, thank you once more. Excuse me. It seems we have a big problem on our hands. Let me delve a little bit into the strike action that's been on and off. That in itself is going to be a recurring decimal, either from ASUU, from ASUP, or from whatever name you want to give to them. Though it is a form of social engineering for them to demand more pay or this or that, but are they delivering? The answer is a capital no, highlighted and underlined.
All the strikes, all the...
It's just based on one major factor, which is money. The other factor, which I can say is a little bit tenable, is what the NMA is saying, that doctors against, what are they called, against pharmacists, and in this case, the case of ASUP, or BSc holders, against HND holders. But let's leave that aside and let's hit the nitty-gritty itself, education. Let's talk about education. You see, against the backdrop of Professor Awoshika, I am sad too about our education system. But truth be told, network, we always go in depth. We do our own research. We talk to people like you, professionals in all fields, before we come up with what we come up with. So we're of the intent that, excuse me, let's look at all the parameters on ground. Let's look at the policy, the education policy. Let's look about where and when a Nigerian kid gets educated. Let's look at the implementation of those policies, and let's look at the employability of those kids we turn out. Basically, our policy of 6334, that's the policy on education, is fantastic. But what happens to the implementation? The implementation is shoddy for all we care. And then, truth be told, has been able to do one thing. We don't jumble things together. We would like us all to think along one straight line, and that line is where does education start? Where does it end? I will tell you this today. Education is primary and secondary education. When it comes to tertiary, that is professional specialization. That is why, truth be told, is particular about primary and secondary education. Because if we get that right, we're 70% home. What I'm saying in essence is, I'm reverting back to the 6334. If we can have a good 633, we are in fantastic business. But have we achieved anything in the 633? The answer is still a big no. Let's now look at solutions to it. The baseline factor is always funding. And I don't think my country, Nigeria, is short of funds. Let me tell you this. Courtesy of Naiti. TED Fund has over 200 billion idle. Basic education has over 50 billion idle. You know why those funds are idle? Somebody somewhere is telling us that, is telling you, this is Chamberlain's money. And before I give you your money, I want you to bring part of the money you have on hand before I give you your money.
Is that the major reason?
You see, I hate to use some skirting words, but I will, because from our own angle, our policies tend to become conspiracies at the end of the day.
But I thought that, at that time, what TETFund has said about that huge amount of money lying fallow and the tertiary institutions not accessing them is because they told them to go prepare certain documents and certain proposals, and they couldn't come up with it. And it was shocking to so many people who said, look, if that's the reason why those funds are not being accessed, then we're in trouble.
You're right. You're absolutely correct. But the idea is, coming from the national level, where the policies are made, are implemented, where were they when these tertiary institutions were performing on the funds given prior? Because what they're saying is, we're giving you X amount. What did you do with it? Let's have a breakdown of what you've done with the funds. But honestly, I want to come back home a little bit. I want to talk about primary and secondary education, which is where education is being achieved. And we are looking at solutions here. You see, like the professor who just left said, I was a very good student of the Nigerian education. And I would like to back her up on one thing, which he said. You see, most of us, when we went outdoors to school, there is something they call in America Dean's List. That is, you're a fantastic student. The Dean of Faculty says, oh, you got a bright future. And most of the Nigerians that went out there and had Dean's List or made Dean's List were just based on the education we got from our primary and secondary education. That shows it was fantastic enough for an American dean to appreciate you enough to put you on his list. And that is the education I want us to go back to.
Because what we have now, the list that they have now, for you to make that list, you know what?
It's a good laugh. We can have a good laugh over that.
So how can we go back to that system?
Good. I always think in terms of having a peculiar attitude towards a peculiar mess. Let's use the Nigerian aspect. Let's use our own kind of aptitude to sort these things out. You see, in our old education system, let's start from the primary factor. We've totally lost it. The kids get into class, the teacher writes something on the board. There is no relationship between the teacher and the kids. There is no bonding. The teacher doesn't know who his best kids are, who his dull kids are, or who the average kids are anymore.
Should we be starting from that primary level? What about the preceding ones before the primary? Because I've heard some people say, look, it's even at that stage where we need to start getting it right. Because in some other climes, they first of all teach you about your hands. How do you use your hands? How do you communicate?
You're talking Montessori. Montessori means using your own aptitude and mentality to teach you what you should know.
Have relegated that, or is it not relevant here?
It is relevant, but I'll tell you one thing. It has to do with the family, which is the first line of education. And in this case, we've lost it too. The father and the mother leaves home at 5:30 in the morning and drops a 2-3-year-old kid with a handling store or whatever. That is bad. Secondly, we're doing something which some people are now saying, well, it's good. I want my kids educated. I want them out of the university by age 20. We are missing it. The moment you don't allow a kid to use your last balance, play with his hands, either in sand, with cans of milk, with packets of sugar, he's losing his Montessori abilities. These days, you just find parents, a 2-year-old kid, you just ship him somewhere. He doesn't bond. He's scared shitless most of the time. He gets smacked for weeing on his body or for poo-pooing on himself. And the parents come back at 5, 6 in the evening, picks up this kid, he's already traumatized.
Because, unconsciously, most of the chaps who are able to use or do things with their hands, either the primary, nursery, even secondary, the junior level, the tertiary level.
That's right.
Those things they're able to do with their hands tend to stick faster than the theoretical ones in most
We're on the same page. We're on the same page. That is where there is need for a serious level of improvement on primary and secondary education. And we, truth be told, have done one thing. Most people might throw flags at us, but we're ready for it. We did a survey, and we're trying to find out how best do Nigerian kids learn. You'll be surprised they learn, which is normal though, via audio visuals. And then we said, okay, let's put some of these kids to test, which we did. You wouldn't believe it. The average age of the Nigerian child that we did a survey on was 3 with audio visuals. In most cases, we're passing them audio visuals of musical situations. Will you believe it that our 2.5-year-old kid can dance a zonto, sing along, a kid that can barely talk, dance a zonto, sing along, or do this, she doesn't miss rhythm, he or she doesn't miss rhythm. And when we had a good look at that, it became a pure situation of audio visuals doing the best of it. And the thing is, it doesn't happen once, because it's on air regularly. The moment the first syllable goes on air, the kid is already boogieing to it. That is what is called repetition for emphasis. The kid is now learning via that. And we want to put that into the picture. There is curricula for primary school. I am throwing this challenge at my brother, Fashola, because his mates call him the captain of the class. And Lagos is like little Nigeria. Why don't you put together professors, thinkers, educationists, and put the curricula of learning on DVDs? Grade school, let's say primary school 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Let these kids get used to them. The essence of bonding in the classroom, they can get from those DVDs. It doesn't stop there. We can extrapolate that to the secondary schools too. You get to learn at your own pace. There is distant learning for tertiary institutions. You can access that via the net. But how many people have access to the net? That is why we are saying, let's have DVDs for 100 naira. This is a pure case where we don't mind anybody pirating it. Pirate it and sell it for 50 naira. It comes out good. The result comes out good. So if we told this line, we'll be home free. We are insisting that, my brother Fashola, you're tops. Try and do this for us. Throw it into the system in Lagos for primary and secondary educations, and I can tell you one thing, there is going to be an improvement in the outcome of our education.
So,
one more word. Not just that alone. In Nigeria as we speak, half of Nigerians, 46% to be exact, adult illiterates. These DVDs will help, because while the kids are watching it, the parents that have a better assimilating capacity will learn.